Hello, my name is Attorney Shawn Smith, and you're here again with us on Law Matters. Today, we have a wonderful conversation with Mr. Kevin Ploche, a financial educator and advisor, who's going to talk with us today about financial education and how better manage your cash flow and even your income and your expenses. He's talking more so with some of the outlines in his book, How Money Works, and we invite you to tune in for this wonderful conversation and education. We have in the studio with us today, Kevin Ploche. So good to have you on here today, man. How you doing?
Appreciate you having me, man. Doing good, man.
Anytime, anytime. Now listen, you have a vast experience in the area of finances and more specifically, how money works. Give us a little bit of background about that.
Yeah, it started for me. My parents, as you know, and your parents, you know, migrated from another country. So as you know, with that comes, you know, they don't really know what's going on as it relates to money here in the United States. It's a much different island life than here. Gotcha. As you know. So they struggled a lot because they didn't understand how money works here.
Did you see that growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we were what we would call a large family. It was 4 boys and 1 girl, right? So a lot of hand-me-downs, right, and things like that. We had a great child upbringing, but at the same time, I could see that, you know, we would ask our parents, "Hey, can we go to Disneyland? Can we do this? Can we do that?" It's like, no, we don't have it. You know.
So you're trying to say when you were growing up here in the state of Florida, you didn't get to go to Disney World?
I did get to go to Disney World, but not as much as you like as a kid, you know?
I understand. So that had an impact on you once you got older in you getting into financial affairs and getting some financial wisdom?
Yeah, because I wanted to really understand it, because I wanted to then educate, you know, my family and families to come to say, okay, this is how it works here. You know, so I actually went to school for finance, and I went into accounting thinking that was the ticket. But then as I got into accounting, I realized that's really wasn't what it was. And then when I moved here to Orlando, I got introduced to the financial service industry, and that's when the light bulb went off for me, saying I could actually help families, educate families on a day-to-day basis, educating them how their money should work for them.
So let's go ahead and right into ask you the $10 million question. How does money work?
Well, it is a $10 million question because lack of education. And what I'll say in the beginning is that most people beat themselves up when they don't know. And what I will reassure them to say is that it's probably because of the fact that we don't get educated in school as it relates to finances. There's 2 subjects we talked about before, 2 subjects in life that we don't learn in school, but we have the most problem when we get out.
Which are?
Finances and relationships.
True that.
Right?
True that.
You deal with the relationships more than me. But finances is one of them. So if we don't get that baseline of basics on finances, then what are the chances are that we're going to be successful in life, period, with understanding just the basics of money?
Gotcha.
Right? So that's where we come in and we really educate people on how money works.
So the most important thing is we want to understand how money works. Now, is there an outline that gives us an indication about how money works that will help us start or give us a basis for this conversation? Yeah.
So the wonderful people in our company, they designed a book to help us do that. And the book is called How Money Works, Stop Being a Sucker.
Okay.
Right. And it's really designed to educate the basics on how money works. And in the book, there's 7 money milestones. 7 money milestones?
Yes. All right. And 7 is always a good number.
Hey.
So the first thing we need to understand is there's 7 milestones in order to understand how money works.
Correct.
Right? What's the first milestone?
So the first milestone is gaining a basic financial education. Just like we said before, because we don't learn it in school, there has to be a baseline that you get in order to move on to the next steps.
Now, if I don't get it in school, where do I get a basic understanding of how money works?
That's a good question. You want to what I like to say is, when I'm speaking with families especially, you want to have a team around you. Just like we always talk about sports athletes,
yes.
and they'll say, "Hey, I have a team around me." I incorporate that with every family. I should say you should have a team around you, trusted people that you know that helps you with your taxes, your legal advice, and your financial advice, and others, right? So you should have that trusted person in your life that understands money, that has the credentials to do so, that you can go and ask them questions and you can get educated and get your life in order financially, right?
Which you are to our family. You're the financial advisor, so I can come talk to you, pick up, text you on the phone. Hey, my money's not working. Help me out.
which you have done already in the past. So yeah.
So the first is to get a financial education. That may be reaching out to somebody in terms of how to get your finances in order. What would be number two?
Number two is, then we get into the 6 steps of financial education. So the first one I like to talk about is cash flow.
There's a song that says cash rules everything around me.
Yeah,
for some people, may not.
Yeah.
So take a look at your cash flow. What does that mean?
Now, some people have been taught to create what we call a budget, right? And they mistaken that with cash flow. But there's a difference between having a cash flow and understanding your and creating a budget.
What's the difference?
So cash flow is what comes in and what goes out on a monthly basis.
Your income and your expenses. All right, that's my cash flow.
Right.
But a lot of us may not have enough money coming in to meet their expenses.
Which is why there's a big difference between cash flow and creating a budget, because you can have the best budget in the world created, but if you don't have enough cash flow to facilitate that budget's not going to work for you.
It's a no good budget.
No good budget.
And a lot of us have no good budgets out there.
Right, because they don't understand what's coming in and what's going out on a monthly basis. Right? Once you understand and what I always like to relate it to is every family should operate their finances like it's a business. What does that mean? That means you should, on a monthly basis, assess what you did for the month. Gotcha. Right? I made this amount of money this month. I expended this amount of money this month. What do we have left over? In the industry, we call it discretionary income, or discretionary loss or expenses. So
how do we marry the two of cash flow and budget? Because there may be some listeners who have a static income. This is how much my employer is going to give me every month. I know how much I'm going to make. All right. This is my budget. I know what my expenses are, my mortgage, my rent, my food, my light bill, my water bill. How do we marry the two if you're saying that they're different? Okay, good question. So I encourage everyone to start out with the basics. If you have to write everything out and say, this is what I make, see it on paper, right? This is what I make, and these are my expenses. Now you can see it on paper and say, okay, am I measuring up? So now because there's only two ways you can increase your discretionary income. Either make more money or lower your expenses. So the first thing that everybody can do is look at their expenses and see how they can lower their expenses, right? But once you've done that, now it's on your preference on how you can manage that. So I encourage families to either, if they're Excel spreadsheet savvy, right, utilize a spreadsheet that helps them with their budget, right? Or if they're more like, hey, I like the app world, yes, right? There's a lot of apps. There's apps out there that help you manage your budget and your finances, things like that. So one of them I usually recommend is, say, Mint. Yes. Mint is the app that you can put your finances, you can put your income. It actually links your bank to it. So as you swipe, it categorizes those expenses for you, right? So, for those who are on the go, who say, well, I don't have time to sit down and put something in a spreadsheet. Well, they have apps out there that helps, simplify your life when it comes to that. Now, we've talked about understanding the cash flow and the budget. How does the budget part tie into that? Once I've looked at my cash flow, I see what's coming in, I see what my expenses are. How do I marry my budget to that cash flow? Do I Do I say, okay, well, this is what my budget is going to be, even though I can't meet it? How do I determine what my budget is going to be, I guess is my question.
Right. So once you know what you're making on a monthly basis, then your budget is there to help you manage your expenses.
Say that again.
So once you know how much you're making, your budget is then created to manage those expenses.
So the budget is created to manage my expenses.
Right.
Okay.
Because, you know, when it comes on to expenses, you want to make sure that you're keeping it under a specific realm so it doesn't, you're not going in a negative every single month.
I'm going to tie that into relationships because some people may be sitting down here thinking, well, I know how to manage my expenses, but my spouse or significant other, they don't know how to manage the expenses, right? So maybe you have the budget, you say, well, honey, it's not our budget says that we can't get a new couch this week, or honey, we can't go to the football game because we don't have it in the expenses.
So one of the ways that I help, especially for couples in that scenario, is because there's always going to be one stronger than the other one in that. But the way that I help the stronger one relate a message to the one that needs that help is I say, well, if you can show them the goals first, then when you say here's the budget, then they understand more. Gotcha. So if we're saving for a house, let's say, because that's one of the biggest ones, right? If we have it budgeted that we need to save X amount of dollars per month, now the goal is set. We have to save that amount each month. So now when we're talking about expenses now, it's like, well, if we go over, then we can't save this, then we can't get to the house part that our goal is.
And that was something that we didn't talk about before, and the good book always says, where there is no vision, the people perish. So when you're establishing your budget and when you're looking at your cash flow, you're essentially marrying them together because you have a goal or a vision in mind of where you want to go, whether it be I want to buy a house, or I want to make this investment, I want to make this purchase. That's kind of what you're utilizing to marry your cash flow and your budget. Now, what's number 3? I guess we are on the list.
We're on
number 2.
Number 2, man. Okay. We're on number 2. Number 1 was that good, man. We spent a little longer. Number 2 is debt management. Now, this is a big one because a lot of financial firms out there, they may or may not address debt, depending on their demographic, right? Who are they trying to reach, right? We deal with debt management. We deal with debt because we know that debt is one of the biggest hurdles in most families' finances.
Now, I know how some people deal with debt management. They just don't answer the phone.
They ignore it. They ignore it, right?
Who's the scam likely? That's the guy calling that.
Right.
Is that the best way to deal with debt?
That is not the best way to handle debt.
There's a better way than just
there
not
answer? There is a amazing way.
What is that?
You actually got to talk to them, right?
We do?
Yeah, they're actually pretty nice once you talk to them and you help them understand your situation.
Breaking news here. The creditors are very nice if you talk to them and let them know what's going on.
You got to know. Here's the issue between the creditors and who they're trying to collect from. If they don't know your situation, they're not going to be able to help you.
Gotcha.
Whether it's your mortgage, because in the pandemic there's been a lot of issues with people making rent, people paying mortgages, things of that nature. So having the conversations with your mortgagors is a great situation. You want to do that because what you don't want to do is fall behind and then want to have that conversation.
Gotcha.
If you nip it in the bud early, you say, hey, due to the pandemic, we're at this point in time. Guess what? They have programs that they can put you in so that it doesn't impact you as much as it would if you withhold that information.
I see.
Till later.
So it's about communication with the creditors. I thought you said the 2 biggest things we don't talk about are what? Relationships and
money.
And money.
There you go.
So there's a relationship with my money, that a conversation that I need to be having.
You have to have a healthy relationship. So
you're saying pick up the phone, call the creditor and say, this is my situation. Oh, man.
Yep.
I got you.
So whether it's creditors, whether it's your student loan companies, whether it's your mortgages, all of them have design plans to help you succeed. Now, this is why your trusted, you know, financial person is needed as well, because they should be aware of these programs and can help you direct those conversations when you do talk to those creditors.
Because we may say, well, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to say.
Right.
So when you talk about debt management, you're dealing with have the conversation, but also this is what you need to say within your conversation.
Absolutely.
And if you have that conversation, they'll most likely or hopefully be able to many times work things out for you.
Absolutely.
I got you.
Absolutely.
All right. What's next?
Well, one more thing with debt. Right, there's a way to I talk about two types of debt. There's manageable debt and there's debt that we can't manage.
Debt that we can't manage.
Right.
What's the difference?
So good question. So debt that you can manage, we can put a strategy in place so you can accelerate and pay off your debt as quickly as possible. Right, with some of the strategies we share with you, and they're real simple. Like one, for instance, is what we call the avalanche approach. Have you heard of the avalanche approach?
I think so, but maybe not under that terminology. Give me your definition.
All right. So avalanche approach, let's say you have 3 cars that you're paying off and you pay off one of them. What do you do with that extra income that you just received?
That's that Dave Ramsey approach.
You snowball it into the next one, into the next one, and you help
yes.
accelerate your debt and all that good stuff. So simple things like that, right?
Gotcha.
When your debt is not manageable, this is where, again, your trusted financial person, educator can now direct you into programs that will help you in that light as well. There's several out there. Won't get into it today, but of course, you know, they are there designed to help you get out of debt as quickly as possible. So
with the debt that is unmanageable, without going into the weeds with it, generally what do you advise, or generally what are we to do with the debt that's unmanageable? So first you have to realize that that debt is not manageable. How do you do that? Because my thought was that it's unmanageable because I just can't pay. You can't pay, right? Is that the definition of it being unmanageable? So that's why I talk about the cash flow part first, right? So once you understand your budget, once you understand your income versus your expenses, this does not fit into it, right? Because it's making me in the negative every month. Right. Now we have to say, okay, how can we manage this? What can we do with this debt that's not part of our game plan right now? It's not part of the budget. Not part of the budget, right? It didn't meet the budget requirements. So once you can determine that, now that financial educator, now they can help you take care of that part. You know what I mean? So that's how you determine. I see. Sounds good. Now, after I've done this so far, I've got financially educated. Right. I've done my cash flow and budget. Right. I'm dealing with my debt management. What's number 5? Number 4. That's number 3. Number 3. Yeah, I'm way behind in my numbers. Yeah, they're number 3. So number 3 is emergency fund. Right. What is an emergency fund? Right. Tell us what an emergency fund is. Because everybody has different definitions. Dave Ramsey says $1,000 for an emergency. Right. Do you have the same definition as Dave, or you got a different one? So there's different philosophies on that, and I'll kind of go over it. But the basic definition of an emergency fund is having money set aside in case of an emergency. Right. Right. What we say in our industry is not if an emergency happens, it's when. It's when, because everybody goes through some type of emergency at some point in time in their life. Does legal fees count as an emergency? You know what? I'm not going to answer that. I'm gonna leave that to you. Well, I guess it's so I guess the emergency will depend on the user. On the user, right? Right. So the more common ones is all 4 tires blow out on the highway, and car insurance is not going to pay for that. Right. How do you pay for 4 tires? Right. One of the biggest ones is job interruption. Yes. How do you plan for that? Well, if you know ahead of time what your emergency fund goal is, then you can take care of that. What does that mean? So normally the statistics would say 3 to 6 months of your expenses or your income saved up, right? Right. And what does that mean? So let's say, for instance,
So let's say, for instance, my expenses comes up to be $1,000 a month. If I multiply that by 3, my 3-month goal is $3,000. Right. Now I'll be covering my expenses for those 3 months if something happens. The other philosophy is looking at your income. If I make $6,000 a month, I can multiply that by 3, and now I have $18,000 for my 3-month goal. Now, I tend to go with the latter because if a family's used to making that kind of money and they have an emergency, you wouldn't want to just handle your expenses and that's it.
Correct.
Right? You want to still live your lifestyle even in an emergency, short-term emergency.
So the two different strategies for establishing an emergency fund is 3 to 6 months of your expenses or 3 to 6 months of your income. Understanding that if you do 3 to 6 months of your expenses, just your expenses are going to be covered for the next 3 to 6 months, not what you're used to. What your other part of your budget includes in terms of your income, because you're not going to have that based upon your job interruption. So as someone makes a decision, they say, well, do I want to live the next 3 to 6 months on my expenses or 3 to 6 months on my income?
Right. And now we've even expanded that, not just 3 to 6. We're talking 6 to 9, 6 to 12 months due to the changes in the economy, due to the pandemic. You want to make sure you have a significant emergency fund. And here's a way of doing it to see what your goal should be. Right. Look at your gross salary. Take the first digit off of that gross salary. That tells you statistically how long it will take you to get to that next job, equal or more if there was a job interruption.
I break that down.
All right. So what that means is, let's say for instance I'm used to making $70,000 a year.
Correct.
And I lose that job for whatever reason. It's going to take me about 7 months to get to a position equal or greater
than the job you have now.
So if you know that going in, what should your emergency fund look like?
Should be covered the next 7 months.
About 7 months.
If you're making 70.
Right.
So 88 months, 77 months, 66 months, right. 50, 5 months, all the way on down.
And if you're a 6-figure earner like yourself, it's going to take you a minute, right? No,
gotcha. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. All right. What's the next one? The next item.
So after we've gotten a financial education, we've talked about a cash flow, debt management, emergency fund. The next thing you want to tackle is proper protection. What does that mean? That means you want to make sure you have all of the insurances in your life covered, whether it's car insurance, life insurance, health insurance, home insurance, all of that good stuff. Why do we stress that? Because when we say proper protection, most people say, well, you're protecting your car, you're protecting your home, you're protecting your health. What you're really protecting in addition to those things is your income. Because the reason why we have car insurance, other than the fact that it's mandatory in Florida, right? Is because what you're doing when you have insurance is you're actually transferring financial risk. You're transferring financial risk from yourself to an insurance company that says that if I do get into an accident, I don't have to physically come out of my pocket to pay for the expenses of my car, your car, and possible medical coverage. And
just a bit of advice from a legal standpoint is that if you're driving around without insurance, first of all, that's against the law. And if you do get hit by somebody, then that person or their lawyer is going to ask that your license be suspended until you pay for those person's medical bills. So that's why it's important that you do have insurance, so that one, your insurance company will take care of whatever damages or injuries that other person is due. And then two, if you don't, then a lot of times you're going to be coming out of your pocket. You're going to be personally responsible to pay that, and your license may likely be suspended until that's done. Right. So protection is very key, very important.
Yeah, and that's why we talk about financial education, because most people, when you talk about insurance, they're already X'd out. They're already, like you say, in insurance, I don't really want to have that conversation. But when you properly educate them on what it really does, then it enlightens them to say, man, I do need to go get that car insurance. I do need to get that because I'm transferring financial risk for myself. I would rather pay that monthly cost every month than to say I get into a car accident or whatever and I have to pay those exorbitant amount of money.
I think most of probably our listeners have car insurance, but let's talk about something even deeper. Life insurance.
Absolutely.
So why is it that, you know, I should get life insurance, or that a loved one that I know should have life insurance? Why is that important?
Right. So great question. So life insurance is you want to think of it the same way, right? So you're protecting your income for whatever you leave behind. Because there's a myth out there that says if something happens to me, my debt just disappears or my responsibilities just disappear. And it doesn't. It actually goes to your family in some way, shape, or form, right? As you know, in the legal realm, that's what happens.
Correct.
Right? So you want to make sure you're covering 4 things when you're looking at life insurance. First thing is debt, of course.
Yeah.
Any student loans, any credit cards, any car notes that you have, you want to make sure your family doesn't have to pay for that if something happens to you. The second thing is income replacement. So did you know that life insurance is built also to replace your income for a set amount of years, right? So whether it's 10 years, 20 years, whatever the case may be. So you want to leave something for your family because especially if you're the main breadwinner, let's say, you want to make sure that your family could live off of 10 years or 20 years of your income.
Right.
Right. The third thing you want to cover is your mortgage. You wouldn't want to transfer a mortgage to your family if something happens to you. You want to make sure that's taken care of. So your family would be, you know, would be saved from that. And then last is education, right? So one of the things or one of the dreams that we all have as parents is we want our kids to go to school, right? God forbid something happens to you prematurely. How does school happen? Well, if you can prorate that into an insurance plan, something happens to you prematurely, your kids still get to go to school.
Now, some people may listen to these, and we're talking about steps number 3, 4, and 5. Like, you know what? I just don't have the money to cover those. And I think that goes back to the importance of, you know, we talk about cash flow and establishing a budget.
Right.
Because if you get that fundamental step taken care of, you can then plan for these other things that we're talking about in terms of debt management, in terms of emergency fund, in terms of protection. You can put that in your budget so that you can get to those next levels in your financial.
Yeah. You're absolutely correct because you know, we're talking right now and somebody out there saying, well, how do I spread my money into all of these buckets? Again, this is where your financial professional will help you, because a lot of it starts at the cash flow level. If you don't know what your expenses look like on a monthly basis, you should be able to rattle off on a monthly basis what your expenses look like. Okay, and if you can't do that, that's a problem, because what that tells you is that you aren't really looking at how you spend on a monthly basis.
Gotcha. What
ranges and things of that nature.
So, but just because it's a problem, that don't mean life is over.
No.
It just means like you've got the warning light on in your car, you're low on gas, or check engine light.
Right. Well, but in addition to that, you know, the biggest thing, like we talk about the relationship issue, the biggest thing is knowing that you have the problem.
Yes.
Right. Once you know that you have the problem, now you can fix it, because these things are fixable.
Say that again?
These things are fixable.
They are?
Yes, they are.
And I think that's our biggest obstacle. You know, I think we all go through this. It's like, you know, if somebody's sick, like, oh, they're sick, we need to take them to the doctor. Oh, my car broke down, I need to take it to the mechanic, right? Yep. Oh, somebody got arrested, I need to go to the lawyer.
Yep.
But also, my finances are messed up. What do I do?
Yeah,
I hide in the sand.
Yeah, well, and we haven't been taught to go with a professional as it relates to finances. You know, we're taught to check it out online, you know, look at a few videos that some popular people out there, you know, and you know, read a whole bunch of books. But those things are great, don't get me wrong, but you need that personal touch on that. You need someone that can walk you through it stage by stage, because your situation will change as well, right? When you just start out, your career is much different than when you're seasoned 10, 20, 15 years in your field, right? So those are stages in life. You know, when you start off single, then you get married, then you have kids. Those are all stages in life that you need a financial professional along with you to help you make those transitions.
Let's make this a little bit more personal. Talked about your situation growing up, a home with four brothers in the home, as you also had a sister as well.
Right.
Now, how does, specifically talking about life insurance, what impact did that play, on you growing up? Some people don't know your story of, your mother passing and your dad passing. What impact did that have on you growing up about, specifically life insurance?
Yeah. So, when you are educating families, you can give real life testimonials, if you will, on the importance of it. As you know, my parents, they died pretty early because of cancer, right? So understanding that, going through that, and helping through the process, because me as a financial professional, I also have a financial professional that helps me, right? So just to let you know that even though I know exactly what I'm supposed to do, I still have a professional that helps me along the way as well, right? So one of my mentors, who's a financial professional as well, he helped us through the whole entire process from, for that. So it was a great example, and that's what I share. That's how I help families to this day.
Gotcha. Let me. Did your mom have life insurance?
Yeah, my parents did. Now we talk about having insurance, and then we talk about, are you properly insured? There's a big difference, right?
So we're digging deeper now.
Yeah, you want to get into it.
So now you're saying, you can have protection, but are you properly insured? What does that even mean?
Notice. I noticed the next step is proper protection.
Yes.
Right, because you can have it, and I talk to families all the time, and they'll say, yeah, I have insurance, I have it through the job, or I have my own, and then you ask them how much it is. It's like 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, and then when you go over the what it covers now, then they're like, wow, I didn't know, right? Even if you go 10 times your salary, right off the bat, right there, you should have at minimum 10 times your salary of coverage, right?
Well, what do you advise those individuals who are retired? I have an elder law practice. Most of my clients are not even working, so they may have a Social Security, they may have a pension, retirement accounts that they're living on. How do they know if they're properly insured? Right.
So there's actual plans out there that's designated specifically for just final expenses. So if you're at a stage where all your debts are paid off, you don't have a mortgage, your kids are grown and they're gone and things of that nature, so you don't have to worry about education or a mortgage or income replacement, per se.
Right.
And there are plans out there that are specifically tailored for older individuals that are just looking for final expenses, just to cover their services and things of that nature, so they're not a burden on their kids or anything like that. So again, these are steps, and these are things that your financial professional will know depending on what stage of life you're in.
Man, I've enjoyed this conversation so much about financial education. I would love to have a part 2 of this segment. You have any problem with that?
No.
What do you think we should talk about in part 2?
So part 2, I think we can go into building wealth, and more importantly, preserving wealth.
I like that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ploche.
No problem.